The Forbidden Zone. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had never been called with such urgency. Representatives from 47 civilizations gathered in the crystal chambers of Nexus Prime, their various forms creating a tapestry of evolved life from across the galaxy. The air hummed with tension as Ambassador Kithara of the Zenthari Confederation took her place at the central podium, her forearms gesturing gracefully as she addressed the assembly. "Fellow councilors," her melodic voice echoed through the chamber, "we face an unprecedented situation. The humans have begun expanding beyond their designated boundaries." A ripple of unease passed through the gathered representatives. The insectoid Chithari clicked their mandibles nervously, while the crystalline beings of Zirion pulsed with anxious light. At the far end of the chamber, Elder Vostak of the Ancient Keepers remained motionless, his weathered form seemingly carved from stone. Kithara activated the holographic display, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. A small section near the outer rim glowed red, surrounded by an enormous buffer zone marked with warning symbols. "The Sol system," she continued, "has been under Protocol 7 quarantine for 50,000 years. The humans have now established colonies in 14 systems beyond the containment perimeter. They show no signs of slowing their expansion." Councillor Zeppin of the Aquatic Realms raised a webbed appendage. "Remind us, Ambassador, why the quarantine was established. Many of our species have no memory of the original protocols." All eyes turned to Elder Vostak, whose ancient species served as the galaxy's memory keepers. Slowly, the elderly being rose from his seat, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. "The quarantine was not established to protect us from the humans," he said, his words causing a shocked silence. "It was established to protect the humans from us, and more importantly, to protect the galaxy from what they might become." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Kithara's violet eyes widened in surprise. She had expected many explanations, but not this. "Elder Vostak," she said carefully, "perhaps you could elaborate on these ancient records?" The old keeper activated his personal data crystal, and new images filled the chamber. They showed a galaxy torn apart by war, stars extinguished, entire civilizations reduced to cosmic dust. 50,000 years ago, humanity's ancestors nearly destroyed everything, Vostok began. They possessed abilities that made them incredibly dangerous, not through technology or weapons, but through something far more terrifying. They could influence reality itself through force of will and emotion. The images showed ancient humans moving through space without ships, manipulating matter with their minds, and most disturbing of all, spreading their abilities to other species through some form of psychic contagion. "The war lasted 3,000 years, the elder continued. Entire sectors were evacuated. The surviving ancient humans eventually recognized the destruction they had caused and voluntarily exiled themselves to a remote system. They requested that we maintain a quarantine until their species evolved beyond these dangerous traits. Captain Jake Morrison of the UES Endeavor had no idea his routine survey mission would change galactic history. His ship cruised through the Kepler 442 system, conducting standard planetary surveys for potential colonization. The Endeavor was humanity's pride, a sleek vessel designed for long-range exploration and equipped with the latest Earth technology. "Captain, we're picking up some unusual energy signatures from the fourth planet," reported his science officer, Dr. Sarah Kim. "It's not natural radiation. Looks like, like artificial structures." Jake frowned as he studied the readouts. Humanity had been expanding steadily for the past century, establishing colonies on dozens of worlds. They had encountered evidence of ancient civilizations before, but never anything active. "Take us into orbit, Lieutenant Chen," he ordered his pilot. "Let's get a closer look." As the Endeavor approached the planet, what they discovered defied explanation. Massive crystalline structures dotted the surface, clearly artificial but unlike anything in human databases. More concerning were the energy readings that suggested these structures were still active after thousands of years. "Captain," Dr. Kim called out, her voice tight with excitement and concern. "I'm detecting a ship approaching from the outer system. It's not human design." Jake felt his heart rate increase. First contact. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the galaxy. Now it seemed they were about to get their answer. Red alert, he announced calmly. All hands to stations. Open a channel on all frequencies. The approaching vessel was elegant beyond description, its hull seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal. It was larger than the Endeavour, but moved with graceful precision that spoke of advanced technology. Unknown vessel. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earthship Endeavour. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came immediately, in perfect English but with an otherworldly quality that made Jake's skin prickle. Captain Morrison, I am Ambassador Cathara of the Xanthari Confederation. I must speak with you immediately. Your species is in grave danger, and so is the galaxy. Jake exchanged glances with his bridge crew. Dr. Kim's eyes were wide with excitement, while Lieutenant Chen kept her hands steady on the flight controls, ready for evasive action. Ambassador, you're welcome to come aboard. We'll meet in our conference room. That would be inadvisable, Captain. There are protocols in place. I will transmit data to your ship that will explain everything. What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to accept. The data package that arrived contained star charts showing the galaxy with a massive quarantine zone around human space, historical records of an ancient war, and most shocking of all, genetic analysis comparing modern humans to their ancient ancestors. Jake stared at the information in disbelief. According to these records, humanity had been deliberately isolated from the rest of galactic civilization for 50,000 years. More disturbing still, the reason for this isolation was that ancient humans had possessed psychic abilities, so powerful they had nearly destroyed the galaxy. This is impossible, Dr. Kim whispered as she reviewed the genetic data. These readings suggest that modern humans still carry dormant versions of these abilities. Ambassador Cathara's image appeared on the main screen, her forearms spread in what Jake was beginning to recognize as a gesture of peaceful intent. Captain Morrison, I must ask you to remain calm. What you're learning challenges everything your species believes about its place in the universe. But there's more you need to know. The Galactic Council is currently debating whether to take military action against human expansion. Some members believe your species represents an existential threat. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. We've done nothing wrong. We're explorers, not conquerors. We seek knowledge and peaceful contact with other civilizations. I believe you, Captain, but fear is a powerful force. Your ancestors' actions created a trauma that has lasted 50 millennia. Many species still remember the devastation, passed down through their cultural memories. Dr. Kim had been studying the historical records intently. She looked up with a strange expression on her face. Captain, there's something else here. The ancient humans didn't just have psychic abilities. According to these records, they could share these abilities with other species through direct contact. It was like a psychic virus that spread their powers to anyone they interacted with. Ambassador Cathara nodded gravely. That was the true terror of the ancient war. The humans didn't just fight with their own abilities. They created armies of psychic beings from dozens of species. Entire civilizations became extensions of human will. Jake processed this information, understanding now why his species had been quarantined. But something didn't add up. Ambassador, if we're so dangerous, why are you here talking to us? Shouldn't you be maintaining your distance? Cathara was quiet for a moment. Because, Captain Morrison, I don't believe modern humans are the same as your ancestors. I've been studying your species for years, monitoring your expansion. What I see is a people driven by curiosity, not conquest. You explore to learn, not to dominate. But the Council doesn't agree? The Council is afraid. Fear makes beings do irrational things. They're considering a preemptive strike against all human colonies before your species can awaken to its full potential. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, not just for his crew, but for all of humanity. Everything they had built, every colony they had established, every dream of reaching the stars hung in the balance. What can we do to prove we're not a threat? That, Captain Morrison, is why I'm here. I believe there's a way to demonstrate that humanity has evolved beyond its ancient nature. but it will require courage from both our species. As the two ships hung in space above the mysterious planet, Jake realized that this conversation would determine not just humanity's future, but the future of galactic civilization itself. The quarantine that had protected the galaxy for 50,000 years was about to be tested, the truth unveiled. Ambassador Cathara's ship, the Harmony's Edge, docked with the Endeavor using technology that Jake could barely comprehend. The docking tubes seemed to reshape themselves to perfectly match human specifications, demonstrating an adaptive capability that spoke of incredibly advanced engineering. When Cathara stepped aboard the human vessel, Jake was struck by her presence. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that shifted between purple and silver depending on the light. Her forearms moved with fluid grace, and her large eyes held an intelligence that seemed both ancient and compassionate. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice now carrying subtle harmonics that hadn't come through the communication system. "I must apologize for the deception. My species has been watching humanity for much longer than you know." Dr. Kim stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocol. "The genetic analysis you sent us shows markers in our DNA that don't match any known human evolutionary path. What exactly are we?" Cathara gestured to the conference room, where she activated a personal holographic projector. The images that emerged showed the galaxy as it had been 50,000 years ago, teeming with life and civilization. "Your ancestors were not originally from Earth," she began, causing Jake and his crew to exchange startled glances. "They came from a world called Terran Prime, in what you now call the Vega system. They were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, but their advancement came with a terrible price." The hologram shifted to show beings that looked remarkably human, but with subtle differences. Their eyes held a faint luminescence and energy seemed to crackle around their bodies. The ancient Terrans developed what they called neural reality manipulation. Through intense concentration and emotional focus, they could alter matter and energy at the quantum level. What started as a scientific achievement became an evolutionary adaptation. Within a few generations, every Terran child was born with these abilities. Jake leaned forward, fascinated despite the disturbing implications. "How is that possible? Evolution doesn't work that fast." "It does when the evolutionary pressure is artificial," Cathara replied. "The Terrans had developed technology that accelerated genetic adaptation. They were trying to create the perfect species. Instead, they created something that couldn't be controlled." The hologram now showed scenes of devastation, entire star systems being torn apart, not by weapons, but by beings who could manipulate reality through force of will. "The problem wasn't just the power itself," Cathara continued. "It was how the power responded to emotion. Fear, anger, hatred, even love and joy could trigger reality-altering events. A Terran having a nightmare could accidentally destroy a moon. A child throwing a tantrum could cause a star to go supernova." Dr. Kim was studying her tablet, comparing the holographic data to human genetic records. "But the DNA analysis shows we still carry these markers. Why haven't modern humans manifested these abilities?" "Because your ancestors made a sacrifice," Cathara explained. "The surviving Terrans after the Great War understood what they had become. They developed a genetic suppression technique, a biological lock that would prevent the abilities from activating. Then they scattered across the galaxy, hoping that evolution and time would eventually eliminate the dangerous traits." The hologram showed a small group of ancient Terrans arriving at a primitive world, blue and green and beautiful. Earth. They chose Earth because it was isolated and had primitive life forms that they could blend with genetically. They wanted their descendants to evolve naturally, hopefully losing the dangerous capabilities over time. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "But we still carry the genes." "Yes. And there are signs that the suppression is weakening. Humans have been reporting increased intuition, unexplained insights, even minor telekinetic events. Your species calls them gut feelings or luck, but they're actually the earliest manifestations of your dormant abilities." Lieutenant Chen, who had been quiet throughout the conversation, suddenly spoke up. Ambassador, with respect, if we're so dangerous, why help us? Why not just let the Council destroy us? Cathara's expression softened, and Jake caught a glimpse of something like hope in her alien features. Because I've studied your species for decades. I've watched how you respond to challenges, how you treat other life forms, how you make decisions. The ancient Terrans were driven by a desire for perfection and control. Modern humans are driven by curiosity and compassion. To demonstrate her point, she activated another holographic display, this one showing recent human history. Images of humans helping disaster victims, scientists sharing knowledge freely, artists creating beauty for its own sake. When humans encounter a problem, you don't typically solve it through force. You innovate, you cooperate, you find creative solutions. When you discovered you weren't alone on Earth, you didn't exterminate other species. You studied them, protected them, even formed emotional bonds with them. Jake nodded slowly, beginning to understand. You think we've evolved beyond our ancestors' nature. I believe you have. But belief isn't enough for the Galactic Council. They need proof. They need to see that modern humans can control these abilities if they awaken, rather than be controlled by them. Dr. Kim looked up from her tablet with excitement. Ambassador, I've been analyzing the suppression mechanism in our DNA. It's not completely stable. The genetic locks are showing signs of degradation. Some humans might already be experiencing partial awakening. This was news to Jake. Is that why some people seem to have unusual intuition or unexplained insights? Possibly, Dr. Kim replied. But there's something else. The analysis suggests that the awakening process might be accelerated by emotional stress or life-threatening situations. As if summoned by her words, the ship's alarm suddenly activated. Lieutenant Chen's hands flew over her controls as she reported, Captain, we have multiple ships approaching. 27 vessels, various configurations, weapons, armed. On the main screen, Jake could see a fleet of alien vessels converging on their position. The ships were clearly from different species, but they moved with coordinated precision. Cathara's skin shifted to a deep purple, indicating what Jake was learning to recognize as distress. The Council has acted faster than I expected. That's a joint fleet. They've come to eliminate the human threat. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but something else too. A strange tingling sensation, as if the air around him was becoming charged with energy. They're going to attack us for something our ancestors did 50,000 years ago. Captain, Dr. Kim called out, her voice tight with excitement and fear. The genetic scanners are detecting massive changes in the crew's DNA. The suppression mechanisms are breaking down. The stress of the situation is triggering the awakening. Jake could feel it now, a power building inside him that he had never experienced before. The walls of the ship seemed less solid, as if he could see through them to the quantum level where reality could be reshaped. Around him, his crew was experiencing similar sensations, but instead of fear or the urge to lash out at their attackers, Jake felt something else entirely. He felt connected, not just to his crew, but to the approaching alien fleet. He could sense their fear, their confusion, their uncertainty about whether they were doing the right thing. Ambassador, he said, his voice carrying new harmonics that surprised him. Can you open a channel to the fleet commander? When the communication was established, Jake found himself looking at a massive insectoid being whose compound eyes reflected fear and determination. Human vessel, you will surrender immediately or be destroyed. Your species represents a threat to galactic stability. Jake felt the power flowing through him, understood that he could probably disable or destroy the entire fleet with a thought. The ancient Terran abilities were awakening, just as the Council had feared. Instead, he did something that changed galactic history forever. Fleet Commander, I understand your fear. You're right to be afraid of what we might become. But let me show you what we choose to become. Jake reached out with his newly awakened abilities, not to attack or defend, but to share. He opened his mind to the fleet commander, sharing human memories of cooperation, sacrifice, and compassion. He showed him human children playing together regardless of their differences, scientists sharing discoveries to benefit all humanity, strangers helping each other in times of crisis. The effect was immediate and profound. The fleet commander's aggressive posture relaxed as he experienced human emotion and motivation directly. Through the psychic connection, the understanding spread to other ships in the fleet. "This is impossible," the commander whispered. "The ancient record said Terrans used their abilities to dominate and control." "We're not our ancestors," Jake replied. "We've chosen a different path." Ambassador Cathara watched in amazement as Jake extended his awareness to include her ship and crew. Instead of the overwhelming mental invasion that ancient Terrans had imposed on other species, this felt like an invitation to understanding. "The human is sharing, not controlling," she reported to the fleet. "The awakening has occurred, but they're using their abilities to create connection rather than domination." One by one, the alien ships powered down their weapons. The fleet commander, still connected to Jake's consciousness, began to understand what Cathara had seen in humanity. "Captain Morrison," he said formally, "I am Fleet Commander Thactor of the Combined Defense Force. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I apologize for our actions. We reacted out of fear rather than wisdom." Jake felt the power settling into him, becoming part of who he was rather than something that controlled him. Around him, his crew was experiencing similar integration of their awakened abilities. "Commander Thactor, we understand your caution. Our ancestors made terrible mistakes, but we'd like the chance to prove that evolution and time have changed us. We don't want to repeat the past. We want to build a better future." The crisis was over, but Jake knew it was really just the beginning. Humanity had awakened to its true potential, but more importantly, they had chosen how to use that potential. The galaxy would never be the same. Ambassador Cathara smiled, her forearms spread, in a gesture of celebration. "Captain Morrison, I believe you've just opened a new chapter in galactic history. The quarantine protocol is officially ended. Welcome to the greater community of civilized worlds." As the human ship was escorted to Nexus Prime for the first official diplomatic contact, Jake realized that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. They had proven that power without compassion was destruction, but power guided by wisdom and empathy could transform the galaxy itself. The secret of why aliens had feared human territory was finally revealed, but the real discovery was that humanity had evolved beyond the need to be feared. They had become something better, partners in the greatest exploration of all, the journey toward understanding between different forms of life across the stars.